Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to your official WSOP prep class. Not really a class, but it's a little bit different than our usual studying. If you're joining me live, thank you guys for being here. We're going to get all of your questions answered by the end of this, I would say 30 minutes. If you're watching the replay and you have a burning question that we don't get to in this video, you could either drop them in the comments down below or follow the link for my cards chat thread that's all about answering these questions. I have Jesse here with me. If you guys are used to watching this stream, you know him, fiance, coach, poker player. He's going to be helping us with the strategy portion of this stuff. But if you are coming here from Cards Chat's YouTube channel, then you may not be familiar with him. So say hi to Jesse. He's going to help you out with all the strategy stuff. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
All right, so I've got a couple of questions already in the chat. Hello to Robert Ball, Jerry, Jeff, Don M, whose new screen name is Jamblins. Good to see you guys in the chat. But so far, the questions in there are going to be answered in this little brief PowerPoint that we put together. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about strategy adjustments, overall things that you're going to encounter while you're here for the summer. And then we're going to switch to more logistics questions that I know you're going to have, especially if this is your first time coming to the WSOP. So let's kick it off with Jesse helping us out with strategy. We're going to quickly fly through these, and please feel free to ask any additional questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them.
Hey, if you guys can hear me, let me know if my volume's pretty good, because I'm further away from the microphone than Ashley, and she's much better at projecting her voice than I am. So just let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me all right.
Right. So we were going to just record a video and then post this to Cards Chat's YouTube, but we figured we would do it live so that you guys have a chance to interact with us and get answers in real time. So yeah, just let us know if we're loud enough. First tip, let's get right into it.
Okay.
Take it away.
Why do I see it here but not? It's interesting.
Oh, that is weird. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so first thing is overfold to aggression. If I was to give somebody one piece of advice during the World Series, that would be it. And I mean specifically turn and river aggression or like raises. So like even like flop check raises. Quite often you're gonna be playing against people who don't think about how they want to construct their ranges. And that means that they tend to not think about whether or not they should have bluffs there or what bluffs they want to have. So if it's kind of difficult to find some natural bluffs, then people probably don't have them very often. So you're just going to run into a whole percentage of the field that just won't have enough bluffs on in a ton of different spots, especially when they raise on any street, and especially like turns and rivers. This is especially true for recreational. So if you can identify that somebody's a recreational player, that's probably true as well. Float more often against out of position c-bets. So something that I'm sure people have noticed, especially when you play live. This happens online too, but when you can hear Jesse. Okay, good. I thought it said can't hear.
No, Jesse. They can hear you.
Especially live, people tend to, when they're the pre-flop raiser, let's say they raise pre and you call on the button. When they're the pre-flop raiser, they know they should c-bet a lot, but they don't really differentiate the fact that you really want to be c-betting a lot versus the big blind or the small blind because you're in position. That makes their job harder to float. But when you're out of position, it's very profitable for the in-position player to float, to bluff raise, to do all these things. And if you're just betting 100% of the time, then if your opponent starts floating you or raising a lot, then you're going to have a terrible time. It's going to give you fits. So you want to be that player when you're in position. You want to be floating the c-better a lot. So if somebody raised from the hijack and you call,
here we have an example actually.
Oh, this is perfect.
Let me know if you guys can hear this. This is a prime example of the difference between somebody who's kind of maybe more well studied versus somebody who's kind of old school thinking, where if they raise pre, they feel like they always have to c-bet. So in this spot right here, in case you're not familiar, this is low jack opens. Oops. Low jack opens and the button has called, right? And now they see an ace high flop. And what we have highlighted here is in green, that's how often the hands are supposed to be checking from low jack's position when they get to this flop, because they're out of position. Button has a lot of ace x suiteds in position. So So you want to break down this range a little bit for them? What is different between what we're seeing here and what people actually do in real
Yes.
life?
So in theory, you're supposed to check something like 60% of the time when you're the out of position player, the pre-flop raiser. In reality, people might bet these boards 100% of the time, or maybe they'll bet like 95% of the time they'll check like kings and queens or something like that. But they almost, a lot of people bet like 100% of the time. And what's interesting is even if they're checking 60% of the time, we still get to float nearly every hand. Like we're only folding 20% of hands.
So again, if you're unfamiliar with this, this is showing now what the button is supposed to call with. If low jack only c bets 40% of the time or something, they're still supposed to be calling with all these hands. So we just kind of wanted to show you what is like the GTO approach, and then kind of take that just to show you can be confident in floating a lot of hands in position when you think somebody's just going to c bet 100% of time on an ace high board.
Yeah, so then the question is like, what's the point of showing you this? The point is, if we get to float or raise or whatever, not fold 80% of our hands against a player who's checking 60% of the time, so they have a much stronger range. What do you think happens when they see bet 100%? Every one of their whiffs on the flop is betting. The answer is we probably don't fold almost ever. We're profitable floating or raising nearly every hand, and we can make their lives really difficult. So this is just a really good example of if people see bet too much out of position, you can really make their lives tough, and you can be very profitable if you're just attacking those c bets all the time.
All right. Number 3, stereotypes are important. You hear about it a lot. It's hard to know what you should rely on and what you should ignore. But in general, the reason that so many professionals rely on their stereotypes is because a lot of times they're kind of true. So some of the more important ones, Jesse, you want to go through them?
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of just discussed 2 stereotypes in the last 2 examples, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of what like recreational players tend to do a little bit more. Um, Sometimes you can stereotype on age. For instance, there's like an old cliche that older people don't bluff.
Yeah.
I think that there's definitely some really sharp older players who understand that's going on and they bluff a lot and they get
Yeah.
away with it and they get away with murder. But like age is something. I mean, I know as a female, you probably get stereotyped
Yes.
a lot for doing
Mm-hmm.
certain things.
Yeah.
Um, so are stereotypes always correct? Obviously not. But there's a reason why people say certain things like older people don't bluff, because a lot of them tend to miss a lot of bluffs. So it is good to pay attention to that kind of stuff, because you only get, when you're playing these tournaments, you're going to get like 30 hands with someone, 60 hands with someone, and then you never see them again. So if you can use any immediate information, that's really important. You can also just pick up on these things pretty quickly, right? Like if people look like another stereotype is somebody who just looks kind of meek, like, or maybe they watch somebody run a bluff and they looked at that guy like he's crazy to run a bluff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
That's
that
a
kind
good
of stuff
one.
is super important.
That's definitely a good one. If you, let's say somebody jams all in for 12 blinds and they get called by a hand that's pretty standard, but you hear a comment at the table of somebody being like, "You called with that?" Now you know, like, I mean, they could just be joking or try to put off an image, but for the most part, they probably are genuinely surprised when they aren't well studied, and they might consider that too light. So then you can probably get away with a lot lighter shoves on that opponent. So these are all things you kind of know. Just yeah.
So one of my favorite stereotypes specifically at the World Series is there's a lot of people who come out for the World Series for like a weekend or 1 week, and they have a couple events that they plan to play, and that's it. And for those people, they're going to make every event count because they're not playing 45 events; they're playing 2 events.
Right.
But if you can identify who that is, they're a lot less likely to bluff off their whole stack, and they're a lot less likely to hero call off their whole stack.
Yes.
So that's like one of my favorite possible stereotypes, is like the person who's putting a lot of emphasis on their tournament life and this bullet, because this is the bullet. You know what I mean? So that's super important. Basically, like the more, well, we're gonna get into that in a second. But
yeah. Let's get into the next thing, because I feel like we're gonna.
Yeah, the more attention that you pay at the table to what people are saying, you know, how they kind of carry themselves, anything.
Yeah.
That just gives you so much information. Like my favorite example is there are a ton of people who they'll have a hand on the river. Let's say they get bet into on the river and they have a hand. It's like one of the best possible bluff raises, right? But instead of even considering a bluff raise, they'll just immediately start thinking like like make it clear they have a weak hand. They're thinking about hero calling. So they've never had an intention to raise on the river, right?
Yep.
If I see that, and then let's say they call, like let's say the board is I don't know, ace king 10 something something. They have pocket jacks. They have like a great hand to bluff raise in the river, and they immediately make it clear their hand's weak by their body language, and then they eventually call and they show their hand. That to me lets me know like, okay, this person's never considering bluff raising a river. So great, we're gonna never pay them off when they raise a river because clearly they're just raising rivers for value.
Right. Which goes back to like our aggression. Number one, aggression. Just overfold to aggression from these players because a lot of these rules kind of add up to they're not bluffing enough.
Yeah, there's also times where they'll fail to bluff a river and they'll kind of be like annoyed about it, and then like the next river they're probably more likely to run that bluff just because they don't want to make the same mistake again, especially if it's not versus the same person. I think people often think that only that person was paying attention. So if you're paying attention and then they run the river bet, like they may very well be over bluffing because they're trying to make up for the last time.
So that kind of goes with pay attention to shifting table dynamics. Just because you have a read on somebody at the beginning of the day doesn't mean by level 7 that they're going to be the same player. So notice if they're getting frustrated, if they're getting impatient, if they've had a lot to drink on dinner break. Some of these, they're very common sense things to write down, but it's good to reiterate, pay close attention because a lot of shenanigans go on during adult summer camp, that is WSOP. So you want to be paying attention to that. Something that Jesse talked about earlier was, does somebody at your table have an ego? And he has some strategy tips for that.
Yeah, so egos are kind of fun to pick up on because you'll inevitably have people at your table who have big egos. And there are certain things that they will not do. And one thing that I learned years ago was they will not fold in a big pot to a small bet. So there will be spots where somebody who I think clearly has an ego will, like, I think that they're bluffing in a spot and they finally check, let's say the river, like they give up on their bluff. Like I'll bet like 10% or 5% a pot because they just like, they cannot do it. They can't just fold to this tiny bet. They know that they'll look weak or bad or whatever. So they just end up bluff raising. And like, against somebody who's thinking like, why am I reopening the action for such a small bet? But I think that the ego overtakes the logic in that sort of situation. So there's little things like that you can pick up on, and you can kind of, or like if you know somebody has an ego and they like 3-bet you, and they know you're probably not 4-betting light, but you put in a really small 4-bet, they're just never folding to that 4-bet.
The click it back.
Yeah. There's a lot of things like that. Is somebody getting frustrated, impatient, drunk? That's a very good one. That's one to pick up on for sure.
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing cash games out here.
I think that's one that people miss because by the end of the day, they're getting tired. So they put on their headphones, no shame, but sometimes they'll put in their headphones and kind of like tune out the table because it's the last couple levels of the night. But the problem with that is that's when the blinds are the biggest. That's when the pots are the biggest. And everybody else is also getting tired. So people are playing differently. You can't just like autopilot at the end of the night. So that's why you'll hear pros be completely obsessed with like their fitness and their nutrition leading up to World Series. That's like the new brand of poker player, is like being obsessed with being healthy, especially if they're a tournament pro, because they just have to capitalize on all the other people that are falling asleep by the end of the night or getting a little tipsy.
Yeah. Hey, so I was going to save all the questions for the end, but Robert had a question that should probably be addressed right now. Does the overfold to aggression principle hold true for later stages of the tournament? I think it holds even more true because the deeper people go in the tournament, unless they're a really veteran pro or whatever you want to call it, the deeper people go, the more they put an emphasis on their tournament life and not busting out, and especially not busting out in a stupid way. And a lot of people view bluffing it off as a stupid way to bust out, even though it's part of the game. So I think that even more so as you get to like the last few tables of a tournament or like the final table bubble,
you'll see a lot less aggression.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot less like bluffing as like a raise, or you'll see obviously if you have like, I don't know, I always use an example like Steven Chidwick at your table, he's just gonna have good ranges. But most people get a little more clammed up. Is that the phrase?
Yeah.
When they get deep in the tournament. And so like I think a lot of the money that I made in tournament poker comes specifically from overfolding deep in tournaments. and identifying the people that you're supposed to overfold to deep in tournaments. Not I'm not just doing it versus everyone, but I definitely think that's important.
That actually leads really well into the next one, which is bluff for stacks when ranges are really wide. So if you think like if you've got 4-bet pre-flops going on and you think like the guy only 4-bets with aces or kings or something, and the board runs out kind of bad for him, that might not be the correct time. It could be, but sometimes people get really married to their overpairs in these fields and they might not fold. So when you raise pre and the big blind calls, for example, that's a really good spot to kind of triple barrel them off if by the river you're bluffing all in, for example, because they don't want a hero call for their whole stack. They don't want to bust their one WSOP tournament of the weekend for, on a hero call, basically.
Yeah, and like, if you open the button and they peel the big blind, they might call two streets with like second or third pair, but they won't call that big river bet. And maybe they even fold some top pairs to that big river bet. So now you're getting to fold a huge chunk of their range. And then on top of that, let's say there was like a flush draw on the flop. People tend to fast play their strongest hands because they don't want to get drawn out on. So they might the best hand they might get to the river with is top pair. So if they're folding some top pairs, then they're really folding most of their range. This also combines really nicely with what we said before, where like recreational players or people who come out for like a few days or 1 week also don't like to. If you can identify those people and then you're in these late position spots, you just run like the triple barrel on them, especially when all the draws miss. I think you're gonna
have a lot of success with that.
Yeah, for sure.
What was I gonna? I just had something in my head that I was gonna say about this. Oh yeah, one thing, if you're really good at hand reading and you can put people on, a range of hands and you're really good at multi-street thinking, it may not feel intuitive to you why someone would put you on hands that you cannot have. But remember, these are people playing for fun. And so sometimes they'll get into spots where they'll just get paranoid that you have the nuts because of your aggression. So another reason to just bluff for stacks when ranges are wide, because people will kind of get paranoid that you just have it this time. Somehow, some way you show up with a hand that you probably will never show up with. And where a pro will just call because so be it. If they bust the tournament and are wrong, they're used to that. But a recreational player might not do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had spots where somebody opened like the cutoff and I peeled the button, and then we get to the river and I like jam over their bet, and the board. Let's say the board's like queen, jack 10, something, and they're like naming off hands I could have, and they're like, yeah, or ace king, and it's like I would re-raise every time there with ace king, but like people tend to not hand read perfectly, and so they're going to give you, especially when they're looking for reasons to fold because they don't want to bust the tournament, they're going to even name hands that don't even exist sometimes.
Mitch said, I predict Ashley would 3 bracelets and you will get 1 or 2 min cashes.
I'd take that.
But he also predicted the fifth one is going to be in the 50K Players Championship. So
you're gonna have quite a year.
Solid read. Okay, let's see what's the next one. Oh, this is going to be huge for you guys out in the World Series. I mean, any live tournament, any live poker lately, especially in America, you're going to play multi-way pots. You want to talk about them and how people misplay them?
So I think one of like the biggest mistakes that I'd say like weaker regulars or recreational players or whatever make is that they don't adjust enough to being multi-way. You have to be a lot tighter, right? Because instead of being one of two players in there, you're now one of 4, and 3 other players can make a pretty strong hand on average compared to one other player. So one thing that I see is, people, it's kind of similar to the idea like people not thinking enough about position. So like, for instance, you're supposed to get in with a much lighter hand, late position versus late position, than early position versus early position. But some people in their minds will be like, queens plus is an all-in sort of hand, and jacks is not, so I'll just call it jacks. But when you're button versus cutoff 25 deep, you're not calling with jacks, right? So the same goes for multi-way pots. People kind of think in terms of what's like a strong enough hand to get in, but that changes a lot based on how many players are in the pot. So it can often be nice to enter multi-way pots a little bit late. Because your implied odds are really good because people put in too much money with like top pair or something like that. If you have the board, if you go 4 ways to the flop and the board is queen 6-5 and you start putting in a lot of money with queen 10, you're not going to win. You're not going to find out that you have the best hand very often, right? But a lot of people just be like, oh, I have top pair. This is a hand that I get it.
Perfect. So if you guys have any more strategy discussion or questions or points that you want to make to other people in the chat that we didn't touch on, just drop them in the chat for the next few minutes. We will touch on those. If not,
questions.
If not, yeah, we're going to move into just more logistics. A lot of people had registration questions. So let's start. Oh, Alex said, how wide should we be peeling the big blind multi-way? Well, that has a lot to do with the stack sizes at your table, what your current stack size is, and how aggressive or passive people are post-flop. There's a whole lot that goes into that question.
I have a website for this.
Yeah, you can go to Floptimal.
Go to floptimal.com. It's $30 a month. It will give you the entire pre-flop game tree. You can navigate it. You can look at any position opened and what you peel from the big blind in theory. And then you can make your own decisions. Am I better at poker than this person? Maybe I'll peel a little wider. Is this a really tough player? Maybe I'll peel a little tighter. Is this person really tight? Maybe I'll peel a little bit tighter. You can make your own adjustments, but it's going to give you the game theory optimal approach to every pre-flop spot on a bunch of different stack sizes and tournaments. It's like one of the best, if not the best, resource out there. And
do we still have a code?
Absolutely check it out. Yeah.
If you guys want a little discount code, it is.
You could even type it right there. It's Ash 23. Ash 2023. Damn it, we'll put it in the chat at the end. The code.
Okay, so let's move on to logistics. A lot of people had questions about registration and stuff like that. Do you have any tips for when they should register tournaments?
So I mean, the best thing to do is load up money on your Bravo account, and then you can.
No, I think they mean like what? Well, we're gonna get to that in a second, but I'm specifically talking about strategically within like the tournament itself. Should they buy in level 1 or should they max late reg? What do you?
I mean, if you're only playing that tournament for the day, I'm a big believer in play it as early as possible.
Me too.
Obviously, I show up to stuff late.
Yeah.
And maybe I play a couple things, but if you plan to just play that tournament for the day, I think it's better to get there earlier, unless you're not very good at deep stack play. So if you never play cash games, if you never play that deep stack of tournaments, maybe you should late reg it.
Yeah.
But there are definitely people at the beginning stages of the tournament that will punt off stacks occasionally, and it's nice to be there when they do that. Even if you're not the lucky person who gets that stack, you gave yourself the opportunity to be that person. So I think it's good to reg them early, but if you're doing other stuff, let's say you're playing cash games and you want to jump in there, I don't think late regging is terrible either. It really depends on like what your day looks like and what else you're going to be doing.
Sergio said, is there a preference to play day 1A or B, etc.? I don't think for the World Series in particular, it's they're going to be full days. Like there's no, and they're both going to be soft fields. Like it's not going to be that one day is usually that much better than the other. People have their preferences. They like to play on Saturdays because they think even more recreational players will be in the field. But in general, it's such a big event, and each tournament within the series is attracting people from all over. So I don't think you're gonna have trouble finding soft tables depending on your day.
It's like the main event, but this is also true for most fields. Like every day is gonna be good. These tournaments are pretty soft. That's why we all come out here. Well, that and it's fun. And every day is gonna be good. Howdy, Steve Hinkle.
So these are from the beginning. Okay, everything else has a lot.
Can we go through those, or do you want to do those after?
Oh, I just skimmed them, so I got you.
Okay.
Let's go quickly through some registration questions. So they just kind of posted. Let me pull up the actual table for you. Oh, that's not right. Where is it? 1 second. Let me just change this out. Is it here? There we go. Okay. So you guys can access this website with all the frequently asked questions. There's also WSOP.com/registration that answers all of these specific registration questions. But in general, this is what we do. We show up at the very beginning of the World Series or whenever your first night is that you fly in. We bring in, if you have at least $2,500, they changed the rule this year. So if you have at least $2,500 worth of buy-ins that you're going to be playing, sign up for an online account where you can register from the Bravo Poker Live app. I think it's called a TBIC account. They might have changed the name, but let me see if that's here. So that's this question here. So we show up, we bring, minimum is $2,500 this year. Put that all into an online WSOP account, and then you can register from there. That's going to save you hours of waiting in line. It's going to save you hours of just like trying to figure out where you're supposed to be going. All you do is you register right on your phone. I walk up to those fast track kiosk. I register for the event on my phone, and then I print out my seat ticket right there. So there's no waiting.
This is literally like the biggest cheat code at the World
Yeah.
Series. Like it'll save you actual hours of standing in line.
Yeah.
Even if you play a few tournaments, these lines get really long for the big, like Millionaire Maker, all those Colossus Monster Stack.
Right. And they do have a rule that is if you sign up for a tournament, let's say that you want to sign up for the tournament the next day, you're not quite sure if you're going to make it, but you also don't want to wait in line. You can register the night before, and if you don't sit down by level 3, they will pick up your chip stack, and obviously you can go collect a refund for not showing up. I don't know how many of those they offer. It's not like you can do that for every day, because I think they limit the amount of times you can do that, but
it used to be 2. I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, maybe 2, something like that. You can also, I'll show you resources at the end of people you can contact for firm answers on that. But if, like I said, if you're on the fence about playing a tournament, but you really don't want to wait in the line the next day, register early. If you can't show up on time, or even by level 3, your chips will get picked up. Let's see, what else?
Food?
Yeah, parking, food, like all these things are in videos that I've made in the past if you guys want to check those out, but I was just putting it up here for if you guys want to ask any questions about that. Cash games.
If you scour the internet, there are cheat codes to getting the Caesars Diamond card. That's a really good idea, because otherwise you pay like $17 for parking or something.
Yeah.
Every day. So if you have a car out there, get the Caesars Diamond card. I think there's certain ways you might even be able to like pair it with a certain status at other casinos.
Yeah, you can like tier match. Yeah.
But there's a lot of good resources out there. I don't really have a recommendation off the top of my head, but there are ways to find the Diamond card, and I would highly recommend doing that, because you'll save yourself hundreds of dollars across the summer.
Yes.
Alex Green, we are a pair.
Yes.
I like the way you said that.
Let me see. And AZ Snoop said, looking forward to playing it this summer. I haven't played since it took place at the Rio. So what are 1 or 2 things that you don't like about WSOP being held at Horseshoe in Paris?
Driving in there's harder.
Yeah. For locals, it's not as great because you have to cross the strip to get there. But
honestly, like I was surprised and impressed last year by how smoothly everything went, considering it was their first year in a new casino, and how much more I liked most of the stuff. Like the other issue is it's a bit of a pain in the ass because it's in 2 different areas now. So you might sign up in Paris and then have to walk over to Bally's or the other way around. But the exchange for that is there's tons of good food around you. You're right on the strip when you walk out. You have access to like tons of places on dinner break or whatever. It's just there's a lot of really good things going on. It's a nicer casino. I hate being rude about the Rio. But,
it is a nicer casino.
Yeah,
that's for sure. And they're renovating.
Right on the strip.
They're renovating. They've got a ton of. This year is going to definitely be better than last year. They've got a ton of new restaurants that opened that I covered in my WSOP video. If you guys haven't checked that out, and there's even more opening. I think the Asian place just opened up like a month ago, and that's right there. So there's like healthy-ish options if you're going to be there for a lengthy stay. I know you're not going to want to eat bad food every day. It certainly helps. I don't know. You're right across from Bellagio. It's nice. It's a nicer view.
I have one thing that's sad that it got moved from the Rio. You'll no longer get the benefit of catching Legionnaire's disease. So
Yeah.
if you're looking forward to Legionnaire's disease, I'm sorry, I haven't heard about anybody getting it at Matt Kiefer playing the main for the first time.
Hell
Let's go,
yeah.
buddy.
Good luck. I'm going to try to start satelliting into that pretty soon.
Staying at the Luxor, any advice on getting over to the venue? Honestly, maybe this is like a cop-out answer, but I think walking there is a great idea because it'll like wake you up, but also...
What? That is such a long walk. All the way from the Luxor?
It's true, but man, you're just going to be inside in this like air-conditioned box for the next like 8 hours. I think it's really nice
but
to
you're...
Oh, I forgot it's 120 in the summer.
We're spoiled.
Ignore me.
We're spoiled right now with our springtime weather, but by the time you guys get out here, you're not going to be wanting to walk all the way from Luxor all the way over to Horseshoe. I'm sorry about that. Take an Uber. Just take an Uber. You could bus it. I mean, it just would take a while for you to wait. Like, it's just, Ubers are pretty cheap out here. So that's your best bet. Just Uber and tell them to not take the strip. Take, what's that road? Paradise? Or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take the back roads.
Options between Park MGM and Paris? I don't know if I know it.
Jay said, I need good breakfast options between Park MGM and Paris. Breakfast options, I would try Cosmo. Cosmo has, they have Egg Slut. They have like a juice bar. They have...
Oh, yeah. I've heard really good things about Egg Slut.
They have this place called the Overlook that's decent, and it's by the pool outside. The Overlook Grill, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of places that are within Cosmo that are decently priced, like that you're not going to be spending a ton of money on.
Yeah, those are good. Those are really good racks. I couldn't think of anything too. Is there a way I can get a parking pass instead of paying the daily fee? Again, like I would try as hard as you can to get a diamond card because that'll save you all the money, but I think they do parking passes.
Craig, thanks for the info. Okay, he said they're only doing tier matches for new card members this year. So if you guys have never had our Caesars rewards, then maybe you could do a tier match if you have a high status at another casino. He said best way for diamond is founder's card for $300. So
I don't know what that.
Not sure if that's going to be cheaper than your overall expenses on parking, but that's a way to go. There's plenty of perks too with diamond card, like you get like your free $200 meals once a year, stuff like that.
Can walk a lot of that inside though. Alex got my back. Let's go.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm always going for walks, and Ashley never wants to join. She hates exercise, so I thought she was gonna like defend herself, but it's the opposite. What are you looking at?
I'm just trying to make sure we didn't skip any questions. Here, yeah. So I mean, there's gonna be there's like something fun about the adventure of figuring it out too. I mean, if you walk over there from Luxor, you're coming in and out of different casinos, and you find that it's okay for you. Great. That'll be great exercise on the way to and from. You can detilt on the way back to your casino as well.
Oh my god! Sometimes I'm very happy that I have the 20-minute drive home after busting out of a tournament.
Jeffrey, that's a good question. I'm not sure about that specific answer about payouts for satellites. That is going to be a more nuanced question. I actually have.
So I think they got rid of the chips, the satellite chips that you would win. That you can make. They're like $500.
The Lammers, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're probably just getting a buy-in straight to a tournament. Most likely.
That's true, Alex. Walking can be just as good as Ubering. I mean, in terms of time.
Yeah, that's true. Although you'll be a lot less sweaty if you take an Uber.
James, I always get that question. It's hard when you live here because we don't stay anywhere. He said, any inside recommendations on nice economical places to stay? It depends if you're sharing a place. You can Airbnb off the strip, but you would be paying for Ubers to commute. If you prefer to be right on the strip, I mean, Horseshoe's room rates are pretty low, right? I mean, you can definitely find casinos on the strip that are decently cheap. I mean, we do have insane resort fees these days, but not sure about that one. I would ask, I have up on here the screen, I have Twitter. If you follow KevMath, he answers a lot of those types of questions. He gets a lot of those. So you want to follow KevMath? He's a great resource for all of the questions that I couldn't answer. Spacey FCB, if you guys want to follow him on Twitter, that's Kenny Holler. He has a full schedule of all the events. If you're unfortunate enough to bust something at WSOP, but you're still got the poker itch, that schedule is is a Google spreadsheet, and you can find every tournament that's happening in every casino that's hosting a tournament in the city. So the Wynn, Venetian, etc. And then if you guys want to ask me something later, or if you're watching this as a recap on Cards Chat's YouTube channel, this bottom, just go to cardchat.com and find the WSOP hype thread that I started. You can ask us any questions. If I can't answer it, I will research it for you and answer it later in that thread so that we can keep this conversation going. It doesn't have to end right now. If something pops up later that you forgot to mention, follow that thread and I'll be happy to answer you guys.
Matt, staying with family is an elite move. You can pull it off for sure.
Yeah, Craig said best areas for Airbnb off the strip. I mean, the further away from the strip you get, generally the nicer. I'm just going to generalize. I'm not going to knock anybody's neighborhood, but the further away from the strip you get, generally the newer and nicer the areas are. That's just how it is in the valley. So, you know, like Summerlin is nice. If you can get right off of the highway, it's only a 20-minute drive to the casino. So if you stay sort of like more in the city area, sometimes it might take you 20 minutes to travel city streets anyway, so it might be worth it. But you know,
Henderson's nice.
Southern but far.
Highlands is nice, and it's probably the easiest drive.
Southern Highlands, Summerlin, and there's some apartments near South Point that are also like generally nice and convenient. So those would be my recs. Jeff said, "Are WSOP cash games softer than average?" Yes. Because you have tournament fish or cash game fish that normally play tournaments like me jumping into cash games right after we bust a tournament. So yes, they will be softer. And just in general, it's people that are big fans of poker from all walks of life that traveled here just to have that experience, but they didn't want to sit for a whole tournament. So.
And if the games aren't good, like there's just infinite games going on in the summer
all around
when all
town.
Stuff's happening. So just go to another casino. I'm sure you'll find a good game.
Alex, are you both playing pretty full schedules? Yes, we just looked at that today. But you know, I usually plan to buy in somewhere around 3 to 4 times the amount that I actually end up buying in. Either I'll take a day off or I won't need as many bullets for tournaments that I thought I was going to need. So a little bit lighter than last year though. I'm not going to go so hard. I'm going to try to give myself some breaks and be able to bring back some vlogs. I've taken I know another person asked about, I know this is for Cards Chat's channel, but real quick, somebody asked me, where have I been? I haven't posted a video in a while. Taken a long break, and the next video addresses why I took a really long break, which I think some of you guys will be able to relate to. And we'll be back in full normal vlog schedule mode starting next week. And live streams. I'll be live streaming as well. I'm going to try to live stream bracelet events. So if you guys don't follow, if you're not hitting the notification bell on this channel yet, go ahead and do that. And you'll know whether I'm streaming that day or not. I'll try to post on social media as best I can.
Ashley, this is a limited time offer. Ashley's guaranteeing that she wins 2 online bracelet events this year.
Just for you guys.
Guaranteeing, not predicting.
Brad, good question. If I can figure out how to sell pieces on, what's it called? Stake Kings?
Yeah.
If I can figure out how to sell pieces on Stake Kings that aren't unreasonably high, then yes, I will be selling to anybody who wants a sweat. The problem with Stake Kings normally is that they charge a percentage for you to use their services, which means that players often put that into their markup price. I don't want to be charging a ridiculous markup to cover the fee, so I'll work on that and see what I can do for you guys.
If you're charging on top of the markup, but either way, it's going to cost them more big.
Yeah, so it might be at a slight higher markup just because they charge for you to post on there, but we'll see. We'll see about that. I will definitely keep you posted. I just created my schedule today, so I'll keep you posted on all of that, you guys. All right, you guys. Last question. How can we spot pros or distinguish between pros and non-pros? Rapid fire answer. How do you spot a pro?
Hoodies, backpacks, bet sizing, maybe how they carry themselves at the table to some extent, but a lot of pros carry themselves in different ways.
I'll give you a very easy one. If they're raising to 3x or more pre-flop, they're probably not a pro in a tournament.
Yeah.
There's a good one.
Pet sizing.
Yay. Okay, you guys, like I said, follow the cards chat thread if you have any more questions. Thank you for watching. Have a good summer. Good luck. I will see you guys if you watch this channel next week in a live stream and a vlog. So take care until next time, you guys.